Uh, Good evening, everybody. This is Monsieur Dan Deutsch from St. Patrick Church here in St. Charles, Illinois. This is the fourth installment in our job transition ministry video series. And what we're doing is we're trying to bring people on to speak to some of the situations and concerns that a lot of our parishioners have, and people who aren't even from our parish might be tuning in because this is such a difficult time for a lot of folks, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. A lot of people are in financial difficulty, worried about their jobs. Just that the situation can be a little overwhelming, and sometimes it's nice just to know that there's somebody out there who can speak to my concerns and might even be willing to speak with me personally. And so today we've got Troy Billings. He's a member of St. Patrick.
Good
And
evening, Senior.
hey, good evening, Troy. It's great to have you with us.
Great to be
And
here.
and I just want to thank you for giving your time and be willing to talk to us tonight as we seek to better serve our people. And here you are helping
Thank
us
you.
do that. So thank you so much. And so before we get started, why don't we just maybe learn a little bit about you? Troy, tell us a little bit about your family.
Sure. So I'm married to Kathleen and have 5 children, ages 5 to 22, and we've been at St. Pat since 2005. I want to thank you and Father Ganella and Father Cladar for all you do at our parish, and
Hmm.
we are also founding members of the Building Amazing Marriages, or our marriage ministry, and have a great team. And want to thank them as well for all they do for our parish. It's great to be here this evening.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, it's great to see you here in this forum because we miss seeing you at mass along with your wife and kids, and they're just you and so many families like you are such a part of the fabric of our
Thank
parish,
you.
and so not to have you all here all the time is a real stretch for us priests too. So I'm enjoying just at least this little time with you right now. And so before we get started, maybe just tell us a bit of about what you do for a living.
Sure. So I've been in the HR, human resources industry for about 25 years now, and actually started my career as a headhunter and worked for third-party search firms helping people to find work. I work with mostly Fortune 500 and 100 clients, and then I migrated into management within HR within corporations, so both external and then again internal HR. And then I eventually migrated into HR technology, where I became a system administrator for applicant tracking systems and HR software. And now I manage global HR transformations for Fortune 100 companies that are looking to change their entire IT HR infrastructure across the globe.
Okay, so you've seen a lot, you've done a lot, and I'm sure right now you're probably witnessing as you do, like you talk about transformation, uh, just some of the things that you're watching other companies go through, or looking for advice on how do we deal with these unprecedented times, huh? So
I am, yes.
yeah, yeah. So I guess I just want to, before we maybe talk about some of the employment opportunity or transition opportunities, one of the things that I've experienced just in these 2 short months that seem like 2 long months, I've had couples mention or people mention to me about just the stress this puts on a marriage. You're from a
Right.
marriage ministry, and it's going into a situation like we're at now. We're in quarantine. We're in close quarters. We're spending a lot of time together. Some marriages might be primely suited to do that. They pray a lot, or they're getting along well. They've been working really hard on just being a good couple. But then there's a lot of couples out there who uh, might find this time together a little bit of a stretch and maybe difficult,
Right.
and they weren't prepared for it, and now it's putting added stress on their marriage. In addition to some of the anxieties and worries and fears about money and jobs, now they've got this stress on their marriage, huh?
Sure.
So, any advice or observations you might want to offer some of the couples out there right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think number one, prayer, right? I mean, marriage and family
Mhm.
life should always start with prayer.
Yeah.
But prayer is very intimate, and some couples are accustomed to doing that. Some do it regularly and do it deeply and others,
Mhm.
they're just learning for the first time. And so, whether you're a deeply prayerful couple or you're just kind of getting started and trying to get used to being together again, I think patience, the old adage, patience is a virtue. I
Yeah.
think empathy, understanding that all of us are suffering in some way, shape, or form, and whether that suffering is externally apparent,
Hmm.
certainly internally, we are all going through challenges. And so to strive to empathize with your spouse and try to understand, where are they coming from? And again, patience, empathy, and compassionate understanding. And
Hmm.
then finally, and especially for us men, listening, being willing to listen to our spouse, give our spouse, the time of day, but really listen to what's on their heart. I
Hmm.
think that is the absolute most critical for marriage. And yes,
Yeah.
stress can cause us to be tense up. It can cause us undue anxiety. But I think if we focus on those areas and obviously try to put God first, that can help out a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's very helpful because you know every marriage is different, and every marriage responds differently to situations. And this is quite a situation, so I'm sure it's bringing out the best. And for couples that maybe aren't equipped, some really difficult times too.
Right.
So thanks for that. Great
Welcome.
advice. And but because drawing on your experience, many years of experience in HR, if somebody's looking for a job right now or thinking about, boy, what happens if I lose my job? What's going to be my plan going forward? What would be just where would a person start in terms
Yeah.
of, okay, looking or preparing to look?
Great question. I'm going to share my screen here, Monsignor, and put up a couple of slides that I think are important to this. Just let me know if you can see my screen.
I totally can see it. Yeah.
Great. All right. So, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. I think it all starts right here. We have got to put our faith and our trust in our Lord, that
Hmm.
despite all the challenges, God is with us. And I'm a linguist. Plans comes from the Latin planum, which actually has an architectural meaning, meaning to start from a baseline, start with something secure and safe. And if I'm building a house, I'm going to start from a foundation. And I like how the word in the Bible by Jeremiah emphasizes that word, because God is not doing anything on a whim. He has a plan for you. And that plan is for you to prosper and be successful and not be harmed, and also for a hope and for a future. And hope comes from the Latin speranza, which means not only to look forward to, but also it has a double meaning of patiently awaiting. And so
Hmm.
God is calling us through this time with our families, in our job situations, to be patient, to trust in Him, to put all of our focus in Him, and to know that He has a plan. And then the second slide I'm going to go to is one of my favorites from St. Augustine. Pray as though everything depended upon God. So let's put all of our yokes and our stresses onto Him, but work as though everything depended on you. And I think of the greats, or I call them the goats: Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, um, Tom Brady, right? They put that yoke on themselves as if the game's on the line, but they also trust in our Lord that He has a much greater plan. And I wanted to emphasize these two slides because we're going to get into the practical momentarily, and as a
Hmm.
follow up to today's call. But it all starts with God in prayer.
Yeah.
Back to you, Monsignor.
Yeah. No, I really think that's. I don't know if you saw any of it, but ESPN just had a great series on Michael Jordan,
Yeah,
and
I did.
it was because there's been no sports on, so
Right.
here in the house we were all over it. And but what I noticed about that, what you just said, is that you throughout the and anybody that was talking, even Michael himself, you knew that that guy he put everything on himself.
Absolutely.
He planned, he practiced, he perfected, and he did everything he's supposed to do, and then he let the chips fall. And so, in a
Right.
spiritual context, um, and that gives me great comfort. And if somebody's listening to that, I'm sure that they felt a great sense of peace just listening to you talk about that, because in the end, it's like, all right, I'm going to do the work, but I know God's got a plan, And if I just do the work and trust in that plan, it's going to be okay. He's taken care of me
Absolutely.
before. He's going to do it again. So how do I position myself to make sure that that's happening for me and my family? So that was excellent advice. Now,
Thank
if
you.
I was gonna, let's say, starting from that, I get up in the morning, uh, right away. The heroic minute, how I start my day defines the rest of it. How do
Yeah.
how do I organize my day if this is kind of the thing that I'm in right now?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, routine, right? So if you had
Yeah.
a routine before a job loss or before a job transition, try to stick with that routine. I always strive to start my day off with prayer. Always trust my day to the Lord. Make sure you intersperse your day with some form of exercise. I
Hmm.
think a clean and a proper diet, right? We all are splurging, myself included, during
Oh
this
my
COVID
gosh.
time. I've been enjoying my fair share of unhealthy foods, but in the same token, we want to try to eat well, right? To
Yeah.
balance it all, prayer, exercise, eating as healthy as possible. If you take supplements or vitamins, take those. And then finally, you want to set goals. You want to plan your day so that you can actually have a focus of, okay, starting today, I want to drive to conclusion the following objectives and just set those
Hmm.
out. And again, after today's session, because we're a little light on time, I'm going to offer a webinar where I'm going to walk you through the step by steps on best practices on how to do that. And we're going to actually deep dive into job searching. But at a super high level, Monsignor, those are my
Hmm.
recommendations for how to conduct your business today.
Wow, that's great. It all depends on how you start, and when this whole thing got going, I had to like make a firm resolve that each day, this is what we as priests were going to do, and that we were going to follow this programming schedule and we're going to deviate. Yeah, we were going to exercise. We spent a lot, we're doing things now that we weren't doing before. We added in, but we've been faithful to that. We eat together. We'll socialize together. In a certain sense, because we had it organized. This has actually been a blessed time,
Yeah,
and
it really
and
has.
even that transition time for people, if they structure it right and pray and are doing some of the things you mentioned, it can be a totally blessed time for them. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So if I had if I'm trying to figure out a certain path, or where do I look, where do I go to? Are there any sources out there for people to dive into that might help them and guide them in some of their decision making?
Yeah, there absolutely are, and I want to focus on the next couple of slides.
Yeah.
So when we look at a job market, there's what's called a formal market and an informal market. And just super briefly, right? Think of a pizza pie. All right, this is a slice of the pie. And so within the formal market, we've got advertisements. So you go out on the internet, you look for a job, monster.com or some source, and you're going to see help wanted, right? That's your advertisement. And then you have search firms. Search firms help you to find work through recruiters and external agencies. And then other might be what are called job board aggregators, like an Indeed.com, where they actually take different posts, pull them into one database, and help you to find jobs. But notice how small this piece of the pie is. All right, so here's some examples: Monster.com, Dice.com, Career Builder. You've probably seen a lot of these advertisements. Sorry. But this is the kicker: 10 to 20% of available jobs are in the formal market. Okay. So if I'm
Hmm.
going to spend my time during the day, I want to focus on that 80 to 90%. And that's where we get to the secondary or the informal market, which are known jobs and hidden jobs. And I want you to think about this for a second. So, known jobs are those jobs inside of corporations where there's a specific position already available. And we know for a fact
Hmm.
that eventually somebody's going to move on to a new role and we're going to need to backfill that position. That
Yeah.
becomes then we've got hidden jobs, and the hidden jobs are those that, frankly, it's brand new position. It's something that's in the
Hmm.
works. It's being created. Now, why am I going into so much detail? Because if you're looking for work or you want to do a career transition, it's
Hmm.
important to understand that 80 to 90% are in these two categories, and this is where you want to spend your time.
Hmm.
How do you spend your time? Networking, word of mouth, and referral based sourcing. And here on the far left, I won't read them all, But as a quick screenshot for your viewers, these are the types of sources where employers are looking for candidates. And again, in my upcoming webinar, I'm going to deep dive into how to find those hidden jobs and how to understand what jobs are open. You can focus on that 80 to 90% and decrease the amount of wasted time on that 10 to 20%.
Okay. Wow. That's startling. Because the first part you mentioned, that's where I would have started. But I totally understand that we know people, they know people, and it just a conversation between friends could reveal all sorts of information, even just by saying, "Hey, I'm looking for this," and if you hadn't said that, that person never would have shared that information they had because they didn't know.
Right.
So excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
That's huge. Now tell me a little bit more about this webinar. What is that? You've mentioned it a couple times.
Actually, following today's session, I am going to host a webinar a week from today.
Okay.
Actually, I'll put the date out there.
Oh,
but
good.
I'm actually going to deep dive and talk about, how do I go about finding the jobs that are in the hidden job market, the known jobs. We'll talk about networking strategies. How do I have my elevator pitch? So there's always a why behind what it is I'm looking for. And you're either in a position where, and I'm going to mention a few categories, okay? You're in a position where you've just got to work and you need whatever you can get to bring in some money, right? That's one situation you're in. You also might have a job that you love, but you recognize that the writing's on the wall, and now's the time I've got to look to move on to something else. And then finally, you may be wanting to transition to something brand new. Well, how do you do that? How do you write a good, solid resume that helps to present that target objective? How do you go about marketing yourself so that you can get in front of the right person? And then the real strong key here is, how do you get in front of the right person, right? Because if the job is, or if you're trying to figure out how to quote unquote break into a company in order to find those roles that are available, that's what we're going to talk about in those kinds of techniques.
Okay. Wow. That's super. But yeah, I'm glad you're going to share that information with us, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who would be interested in that. So along those lines, maybe just to close up, one last question for you. You talk about resourcing. Are there any books out there, or anything like that people can get their hands on?
There sure are. And actually, this one last slide I wanted to show you. There are 2 upcoming virtual job fairs. One's with a company called aseonline.org. The other one is a virtual Future Workplace Summit. These are 2 great places. Again, I'm going to send this deck to you, Monsignor, so you can distribute to anyone who asks. These are 2 places up and coming May 27th to look for work. And again, finally, I know we're running out of time here. Some great books. What Color is Your Parachute? It's a practical manual for job hunters and career changers. These are some of my favorites. Harvey McKay, who's a businessman out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. It's all about networking and best practices in building that network before you're thirsty. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Fantastic game changer for how to set goals and achieve them. And then finally, high impact interview questions. So when you go into an interview situation, is what's called those behavioral based questions, where they're kind of probing, like, tell me about yourself, or tell me about a time that. Those are purposely open-ended questions that frankly are intended in some cases to trip you up. They're also intended to find out if you've actually got the savvy to answer the question correctly. It's a good book to read, but in my upcoming webinar, we're also going to talk about how to overcome some objections and how to manage those kinds of questions.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
Here's the visual. It's called You're Hired, How to Use Your Head to Get Your Foot in the Door.
Foot in the door. Hey. Okay. That's terrific. I love stuff like that. So, Troy, just going to thank you for all your time and your wisdom and your expertise and all the things you shared with us today. Very valuable and pretty exciting. Very concrete information. And if folks wanted to get in touch with you, would you be open for us to pass that information along to you?
Absolutely. Be happy to.
Any questions?
Sure,
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And folks at home, I'm just so glad you joined us tonight for this episode of our transitional job ministry during these uncertain times. We're hoping this is helpful. but mainly we're just glad that we can do this together, be in it together. And so if you have any questions for Troy or for any of the other presenters that we've had on, don't hesitate to get in touch with us here at St. Pat's, and we'll certainly pass that information along to the people that you're directing it towards. And meanwhile, know everybody that we're praying for you, and that we're all in this together. And I love Troy's advice at the beginning that, if we're praying and we realize that the Lord's got a plan, and if we're doing everything we can on our end, the Lord's more than he's always gonna fulfill his end of the bargain. Amen. All right.
Amen.
So everybody, thank you, Troy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Monsignor. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And folks, we'll see you later. Have a good night. God bless.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.